The heavens opened up without warning, releasing a deluge that transformed the docile creek behind Naomi, Calloway's modest homestead, into a raging monster. She had only moments to comprehend the danger before the rushing water engulfed the ground beneath her feet, sweeping her away like a leaf in an autumn wind. Death seemed certain until a strong hand caught hers, refusing to surrender her to the merciless current. Parowan, Utah Territory, 1872. Naomi had been hanging laundry when the wall of water came. The sky above Parowan had been clear that morning, deceptively so. No one in town had anticipated the flash flood that would tear through their community with such ferocity. "Hang on!" A voice shouted above the roar of the water. Through the spray, Naomi could barely make out the face of the man who held her fate in his grip. His hat was gone, dark hair plastered to his forehead, determination etched into every line of his sun-bronzed face. She recognized him vaguely as one of the cowboys who had ridden into town a few days prior, seeking work with the local ranchers. His fingers dug into her wrist as the current pulled at her body. She could feel herself slipping. "I can't," she gasped, water filling her mouth. "You can," he insisted, his voice carrying over the flood's thunderous roar. "Look at me, miss. Look at me." Naomi forced her gaze up, meeting eyes as blue as a summer sky. "I ain't letting go," he promised. "Not today, not ever." Those words, spoken by a virtual stranger in the midst of chaos, somehow anchored her. With strength she didn't know she possessed, Naomi grabbed his arm with her free hand. Inch by painful inch, he pulled her toward the relative safety of a partially submerged fence post. "Name's Tucker Quinn," he managed between labored breaths. "Figured we ought to be properly introduced, seeing as how we're in this together." Despite everything, a laugh bubbled up from Naomi's chest. "Naomi Calloway. Pleased to meet you, Mr. Quinn, though I wish circumstances were different." His smile flashed white against his tanned face. "Life don't always give us choices about the when and where, Miss Calloway." The water continued to rise around them, churning with debris from shattered homes and livelihoods. Naomi's small vegetable garden had already disappeared, and she could see the corner of her cabin starting to give way. "My home," she whispered, heartbreak evident in her voice. Tucker's eyes followed her gaze. "Buildings can be rebuilt, lives can't." His grip on her tightened. "We need to move." "That fence post won't hold much longer." "Move where?" The panic that had briefly subsided surged again. "There's nothing but water. See that cottonwood?" He nodded toward a massive tree about 20 yards away, its lower branches dipping into the flood. "If we can reach it, we can climb up until help comes or the water recedes." "I'm not much of a swimmer," Naomi admitted. "Then it's fortunate I am. Grew up on the Mississippi." Tucker's confident tone belied the gravity of their situation. "We'll go together." "When I say now, I need you to push off and kick as hard as you can. I'll do most of the work, but I need your help." Naomi nodded, her throat tight with fear. "Now," Tucker shouted, launching them both into the current. The water's power was staggering. It spun them, disorienting Naomi until she couldn't tell which way was up. Only Tucker's firm grip kept her from being swept away. She kicked wildly, fighting against the pull of her sodden skirts. Tucker's strength seemed superhuman as he battled the current, one arm wrapped securely around her waist, the other reaching for anything that might provide purchase. Miraculously, his hand found a low-hanging branch. With a grunt of effort, he pulled them both toward the relative safety of the tree. "Grab hold," he instructed, maneuvering her toward the branch. Naomi clutched the rough bark, her arms trembling with exertion. Tucker guided her higher until they both sat straddling a thick limb several feet above the raging water. "There," he panted, pushing dripping hair from his face. "That ought to hold us for now." Naomi couldn't speak. Her lungs burned, her throat raw from swallowed water. She simply nodded, overwhelmed by how close she had come to death, and by the stranger who had risked his own life to save hers. Below them, the flood showed no signs of abating. Debris crashed against the tree trunk. Broken furniture, fence posts, even what appeared to be a chicken coop, its former occupants nowhere to be seen. The water had risen to within a few feet of their perch. My sister, Naomi suddenly remembered. She's in town with her children. Do you think town's on higher ground? Tucker reassured her. Likely why they built there in the first place. Your sister should be safe. The thought provided some comfort. Naomi had come to Parowan 2 years ago after her sister Martha married a local merchant. When their parents died of influenza back east, Naomi had sold everything and headed west, determined to start anew. The small cabin by the creek had represented independence, something she had fought hard to achieve. Everything I own was in that cabin, she said, watching as another piece of her life floated past. Tucker's expression softened. I'm sorry, Miss Calloway, truly. Please call me Naomi. I think saving my life puts us on a first-name basis. His smile returned, warming her despite her sodden clothes. Naomi it is, then. They fell silent, conserving strength as they watched the devastation unfold around them. The hours crawled by. Occasionally they heard distant shouts, but no help appeared. The sun began its descent, casting long shadows across the flood-ravaged landscape. We can't stay here all night, Tucker finally said. Temperatures dropping. Naomi had noticed. Her wet clothing clung to her skin and she couldn't stop shivering. What do you suggest? Tucker scanned the horizon. Water's starting to recede. See that ridge? It's maybe 200 yards, but it's our best chance. We could reach solid ground before dark. The prospect of returning to the water filled Naomi with dread, but she knew he was right. Already her limbs were growing numb from cold and inactivity. I'll trust your judgment, she said, though her voice betrayed her fear. Tucker's hand found hers. I won't let anything happen to you, Naomi. That's a promise. She believed him. Something in his steady gaze told her this was a man who kept his word. The journey to the ridge proved even more harrowing than their escape to the tree. The receding water moved faster in some places, creating whirlpools that threatened to drag them under. Tucker fashioned a makeshift rope from his belt, binding them together as they navigated the treacherous terrain. When they finally reached higher ground, Naomi collapsed onto the muddy earth, too exhausted to care about the state of her already ruined dress. Tucker sank down beside her, his breathing labored but his eyes alert, scanning their surroundings. We need to find shelter and get you warm, he said. There's an old line shack about a mile north, Naomi replied. Belongs to the Henderson Ranch. They won't mind us using it. Tucker stood, extending his hand. Think you can make it that far? Naomi nodded, allowing him to pull her to her feet. Her legs protested after the day's ordeal, but determination propelled her forward. They walked in companionable silence, the enormity of what they had survived settling between them like an unspoken bond. The line shack was crude but dry, with a small fireplace and basic provisions. Tucker had a fire going in minutes, its warmth a welcome relief to their chilled bodies. You should change, he said, gesturing to her wet clothing. I'll wait outside. There's nothing to change into, Naomi pointed out. Tucker shrugged out of his vest. Take this, and my shirt. It's still damp, but it'll be warmer than what you're wearing. Before she could protest, he unbuttoned his shirt, revealing a torso hardened by years of physical labor. Naomi quickly averted her eyes, though not before noticing a long scar that ran across his left side. Thank you, she murmured, accepting the offered garments. True to his word, Tucker stepped outside while she changed. His shirt hung loosely on her smaller frame, but it was indeed warmer than her sodden dress. She laid her clothes near the fire to dry, keeping her petticoat for modesty's sake. "You can come back in," she called when she was decent. Tucker returned, his bare chest glistening in the firelight. He had found some jerky and hardtack in the shack's meager supplies. "Not much of a feast," he apologized, offering her a portion. "I'm grateful for anything." Naomi accepted the food. "I'm grateful for everything today." "If you hadn't been there." "But I was," Tucker interrupted gently. "No sense dwelling on what might have been." They ate in silence, the crackling fire and distant rumble of the receding floodwaters the only sounds. Exhaustion soon overwhelmed Naomi, her eyelids growing heavy despite her best efforts. "Sleep," Tucker urged. "I'll keep watch." "You need rest too," she protested. "I'll rest when you're safely back with your sister." Too tired to argue, Naomi curled up near the fire, Tucker's vest serving as a makeshift pillow. The last thing she remembered before drifting off was his steadfast presence beside her, a guardian against the chaos that had turned her world upside down. Morning arrived with pale sunlight filtering through the shack's single window. Naomi awoke disoriented, memories of the previous day flooding back as she took in her surroundings. Tucker was seated by the door, his back against the wall, eyes closed in sleep. He had kept his word, standing guard through the night until exhaustion claimed him. Naomi stirred, attempting to rise quietly, but the floorboards creaked beneath her. Tucker's eyes snapped open instantly, hand moving to his hip where his gun would normally be. "It's just me," Naomi said softly. Recognition dawned and his posture relaxed. "Morning, how are you feeling?" "Sore, grateful, uncertain." She offered a small smile. "My clothes are dry at least." Tucker nodded, diplomatically averting his gaze as she gathered her dress. He stepped outside again, allowing her privacy to change. When she emerged from the shack, he was studying the landscape, his expression thoughtful. "The flood has mostly receded," he observed. "We should be able to make it to town without much trouble." They set off toward Parowan, picking their way through the aftermath of nature's fury. The destruction was sobering. Where Naomi's cabin had stood was now nothing but scattered timber and mud. Fields were coated in silt, fences demolished, livestock carcasses dotting the landscape. "I've never seen anything like it," Naomi murmured, surveying what remained of her home. Tucker placed a hand on her shoulder. "Nature can be cruel, but people are resilient." The main street of Parowan was a hive of activity despite the early hour. Townspeople worked together to clear debris and assess damage. When Naomi and Tucker appeared, muddy and bedraggled, a cry went up. "Naomi!" Her sister Martha rushed forward, children in tow. "Oh, thank God! We thought when your cabin was gone we feared the worst." The sisters embraced, tears flowing freely. Martha's husband Thomas stood nearby, relief evident on his weathered face. "This man saved my life," Naomi said, gesturing to Tucker. "If not for him, I wouldn't be here." Martha turned to Tucker, gratitude shining in eyes so similar to Naomi's. "We can never repay you, sir." Tucker removed his hat, running a hand through his disheveled hair. "No repayment necessary, madam. Anyone would have done the same." "Not just anyone would have succeeded," Thomas countered, stepping forward to shake Tucker's hand. "You're welcome in our home for as long as you need." Tucker accepted the handshake. "Much obliged, but I don't want to impose." "Nonsense," Martha insisted. "It's the least we can do." As they walked toward the Mercer home, Martha had married Thomas Mercer, the town's general store owner. Naomi found herself studying Tucker in the clear light of day. He was younger than she had initially thought, perhaps 30 or so. His features were strong rather than handsome, with laugh lines around his eyes suggesting a man who found joy despite life's hardships. The Mercer home was modest but comfortable, situated on the town's main street above Thomas's store. After the sisters prepared a hearty breakfast, Tucker excused himself to find his companions, promising to return later. "Where did you find him?" Martha asked once he had gone, her tone suggesting more than casual interest. "He found me," Naomi corrected. "Or rather, he caught me when the flood swept me away." She recounted the harrowing experience, watching her sister's eyes widen. "Providence," Martha declared when Naomi finished. "The Lord sent him to you." Naomi wasn't sure about divine intervention, but she couldn't deny Tucker's timely appearance had saved her life. "Whatever brought him here, I'm grateful." "As are we all," Thomas added, bouncing his youngest daughter on his knee. "Question is, what will you do now, Naomi? Your cabin's gone." The reality of her situation hit anew. Everything she owned had been in that cabin: her clothes, her mother's Bible, the quilt her grandmother had made, all gone. "I don't know," she admitted. "Start over, I suppose." "You'll stay with us," Martha stated firmly, "for as long as needed." Naomi appreciated the offer, but independence had always been important to her. After years of caring for their ailing parents, she had relished having her own space, making her own decisions. The thought of becoming dependent again, even on her beloved sister, filled her with unease. "I need to think about it," she said diplomatically. The day passed in a blur of activity. The entire town rallied, assessing damage, salvaging what could be saved, comforting those who had lost everything. 3 lives had been claimed by the flood: an elderly couple who couldn't evacuate in time, and a young ranch hand who'd been caught in the open. As evening approached, Tucker returned to the Mercer home as promised, cleaned up and wearing fresh clothes. He had been helping clear debris from the main road. Naomi's heart quickened at the sight of him, a reaction she attributed to their shared ordeal. "Your friends weren't concerned about your absence?" she asked as they sat down to supper. Tucker shook his head. "They figured I could take care of myself. Were more worried about their horses, truth be told." "And the horses?" Thomas inquired. "Safe. We had them stabled at the livery on the high side of town." Tucker accepted the plate Martha offered. "Mighty kind of you to have me, Mrs. Mercer." "Please call me Martha, and it's we who are in your debt." She served her children before taking her own seat. "Naomi tells us you're looking for ranch work." Tucker nodded. "Me and 2 others rode up from Arizona, heard the Henderson spread was hiring." "They are," Thomas confirmed. "Or were before the flood. Might be they'll need even more hands now to rebuild." Conversation flowed easily through the meal. Tucker spoke little of his past, but his stories revealed a man who had lived a nomadic existence, working ranches across the Southwest. He was articulate despite his limited formal education, with a quick wit that had the children giggling. After the children were tucked in bed, the adults lingered at the table, sipping coffee. Thomas eventually excused himself to complete the store's ledger, leaving the women with Tucker. "Will you be staying in Parowan long?" Naomi ventured to ask. Tucker considered the question. "Depends on the work. Never been one to put down roots." "A rolling stone gathers no moss," Martha quoted. "Nor does it gather much else," Tucker replied with a wry smile. "But it sees a fair bit of country." Naomi found herself wondering what would compel a man to live such a transient life. There was no wedding band on his finger, but that didn't mean there wasn't someone waiting somewhere. As if reading her thoughts, Martha asked, "No wife waiting for you somewhere, Mr. Quinn? Tucker, please." "And no, madam. Never found a woman willing to put up with my wandering ways." His gaze flickered briefly to Naomi. "Or perhaps I never found one worth staying put for." The comment hung in the air, charged with unspoken possibility. Naomi felt a blush creep up her neck, much to her dismay. At 26, she was hardly a schoolgirl to be flustered by a handsome cowboy's attention. "Well," Martha said, breaking the moment with maternal practicality, "you're welcome to the spare room for as long as you need it." Tucker looked surprised. "That's generous, but I arranged for a room at the boarding house." "Nonsense," Martha insisted. "After what you did for Naomi, it's the least we can offer." Tucker's eyes found Naomi's again, seeking her opinion. "Please," she said softly, "it would mean a lot to us." Something in her expression must have convinced him. "All right then, thank you." That night, lying in the bed she shared with her niece, Naomi found sleep elusive. The events of the past 2 days played through her mind on endless repeat. The rushing water, Tucker's strong hand gripping hers, the absolute certainty she had felt that he wouldn't let go. She had never been one for fairy tales or knights in shining armor. Life had taught her early that women must be their own rescuers. Yet Tucker Quinn had saved her, not just from drowning but from giving up when all seemed lost. What did that mean? Perhaps nothing. He was a good man who had done what any good man would do. The intensity of her gratitude and, yes, attraction was surely a natural response to such circumstances. Yet as dawn broke, Naomi couldn't shake the feeling that something fundamental had shifted in her life, something even more significant than the loss of her home. She just wasn't sure what that something was. The next week passed in a flurry of rebuilding efforts. True to Thomas's prediction, the Henderson Ranch hired Tucker and his companions, tasking them with repairing fences and rounding up scattered cattle. Naomi saw little of him during daylight hours, but he joined the family for supper most evenings, his presence becoming a welcome fixture in the Mercer household. Naomi threw herself into helping the town recover, assisting Martha at the general store where many came seeking supplies to rebuild. The work kept her hands busy, but her mind often wandered to the cowboy who had saved her life. 8 days after the flood, Tucker approached her as she swept the store's porch. "Got something to show you," he said without preamble, "if you can spare the time." Curiosity piqued, Naomi set aside the broom. "What is it?" Tucker's eyes crinkled. That would spoil the surprise. With Martha's blessing, Naomi accompanied Tucker to the edge of town where his horse waited. He offered her a hand up, swinging into the saddle behind her once she was settled. "Where are we going?" she asked as they rode out of town. "Not far," Tucker assured her, his breath warm against her ear. They rode in companionable silence, Naomi acutely aware of his chest pressed against her back, his arms encircling her to hold the reins. It was improper, perhaps, but after what they had been through together, conventional proprieties seemed less important. They crested a small rise, and Tucker reined in the horse. Below them lay the creek that had so violently overflowed its banks. Now it burbled peacefully between muddy shores, innocent of the destruction it had wrought. But it wasn't the creek that caught Naomi's attention. It was the activity along its bank, where a group of men worked on what appeared to be the framework of a small cabin. "What is this?" she asked, though a suspicion was already forming. Tucker dismounted, offering his hand to help her down. "Your new home, if you want it." Naomi stared at him, then at the half-built structure. "How Henderson gave me and the boys permission to use some timber from his land. Thomas contributed nails and hardware. Other folks pitched in with labor." Tucker shuffled his feet, suddenly looking uncertain. "I know it ain't much yet, but it's wonderful," Naomi breathed, unexpected tears springing to her eyes. "I don't know what to say." Relief washed over Tucker's face. "You don't need to say anything. Just wanted to give you back a piece of what you lost." Naomi approached the construction site, where several men, including Tucker's companions, paused in their work to greet her. The cabin was simple, one room with a small porch, but it represented something precious: independence. "Why would you do this for me?" she asked when they had a moment alone. Tucker's gaze was steady, honest. "Because I've been rootless my whole life by choice." "You had roots here and they were torn away. Didn't seem right." "Thank you isn't enough," Naomi said, emotion making her voice husky. "Your smile is thanks enough." Tucker reached out, hesitated, then gently brushed a strand of hair from her face. "Been thinking about that smile since the moment I pulled you from the water." The touch, brief as it was, sent warmth cascading through Naomi. She had known men's interest, before had even been courted by the town schoolteacher, until she made it clear her independence mattered more than marriage, but Tucker's attention felt different. It asked nothing of her, demanded no change in who she was. "I should get back to work," Tucker said, breaking the moment. "Henderson's paying me for a full day's labor and I've stolen half of it already." "When will the cabin be finished?" Naomi asked, reluctant to see him go. "Another week, weather permitting." Tucker smiled. "Then you can have your own space again." As they rode back to town, Naomi leaned into Tucker's solid presence, wondering at the turns her life had taken. 2 weeks ago, she had been content in her solitude, certain of her path. Now everything was in flux, including her heart. The cabin was completed in 10 days, its rough-hewn walls and simple furnishings a far cry from Naomi's previous home, but precious nonetheless. The entire town turned out for a cabin-raising celebration, bringing food, small gifts, and well wishes. "It's perfect," Naomi told Tucker as they stood on the porch, watching children play along the now docile creek. "I can never repay you. Wasn't looking to be repaid." Tucker's voice was gruff with emotion he rarely displayed. "Just wanted to see you settled." Something in his tone caught Naomi's attention. "You sound as if you're saying goodbye." Tucker stared out at the horizon. "Henderson's keeping me on, but my friends are heading south tomorrow. Been thinking maybe I should join them." The words struck Naomi like a physical blow. "Why?" "I thought you had steady work here." "I do." Tucker turned to face her, his expression conflicted. "But staying gets harder every day." "I don't understand." Tucker ran a hand through his hair, a gesture she had come to recognize as a sign of his discomfort. "Being near you, Naomi. It makes me want things I've never wanted before, things I'm not sure I've any right to want." The admission hung between them, raw and honest. Naomi's heart hammered against her ribs as she processed his words. "What things?" she asked softly. "A home, roots, someone to come back to at day's end." Tucker's gaze was intense. "You." The directness of his confession stole Naomi's breath. She had sensed his growing feelings had been wrestling with her own, but hearing them spoken aloud made them real in a way that both thrilled and terrified her. "Tucker, you don't need to say anything," he interrupted gently. "I know you value your independence. That's why I helped build this place, so you could have it back." "Independence doesn't have to mean solitude," Naomi found herself saying. "Perhaps it's about choosing who to share your life with, rather than having that choice made for you." Hope flickered across Tucker's face. "What are you saying?" Before Naomi could respond, Martha called from inside the cabin, requesting help with serving the celebration meal. The moment slipped away, but Naomi felt something solidify within her, a certainty about what she wanted. Later that evening, as the celebration wound down and guests departed, Naomi found Tucker by the corral where his horse grazed. The setting sun bathed everything in golden light, highlighting the strong lines of his profile. "Have you decided?" she asked, coming to stand beside him. "About leaving?" Tucker turned, his expression softening at the sight of her. "Not yet." "Stay," Naomi said simply. One word, heavy with meaning. Tucker studied her face, searching for uncertainty and finding none. "Are you sure? I'm still a cowhand with not much to my name. I'm sure that when the flood came, you were the one who caught my hand and wouldn't let go. I'm sure that in the days since, you've shown me what kind of man you are through actions, not just words." Naomi stepped closer. "And I'm sure that the thought of you riding away tomorrow makes me feel like I'm drowning all over again." Tucker's breath caught. Slowly, giving her every chance to pull away, he raised a hand to cup her cheek. "I never intended to fall for you, Naomi Calloway. Just happened like that flash flood, sudden and overwhelming. Some forces of nature can't be fought," she whispered. When his lips met hers, it felt like coming home, a place she hadn't known she was searching for until that moment. His kiss was gentle at first, then deepened with a hunger that matched her own. Naomi wound her arms around his neck, pressing closer. They broke apart at the sound of approaching footsteps, both flushed and breathing hard. Martha appeared around the corner of the cabin, stopping short at the sight of them. "Oh, I was just looking for never mind." She smiled knowingly. "I'll leave you two be." As Martha retreated, Tucker chuckled, resting his forehead against Naomi's. "I think your sister approves. She's been none too subtle about pushing us together." Naomi's fingers toyed with the hair at the nape of his neck. "So you'll stay. Wild horses couldn't drag me away now." Tucker's smile faded, replaced by seriousness. "But I need you to be sure, Naomi. I know how much your independence means to you." "It does mean a great deal to me," she acknowledged. "But so do you. Perhaps there's a way to have both." The next months were a time of growth and change for Parowan. The town rebuilt what had been lost, strengthening foundations and constructing new levees to protect against future floods. Naomi's small cabin became a haven for her and Tucker, who courted her properly despite the raised eyebrows of some townsfolk who considered their living arrangement scandalous. Tucker proved himself to be a man of his word in all things. He worked hard at the Henderson Ranch, earning the respect of his employer and saving every penny he could. In the evenings, he would return to Naomi's cabin where they would share a simple meal and talk of their days, their dreams, their pasts. Tucker spoke of his childhood in Mississippi, of losing his parents young and being raised by an uncle who taught him horsemanship, but little of love, of drifting from job to job, never staying long enough to form attachments, of the emptiness he hadn't recognized until meeting Naomi. Naomi shared her own story, the years spent caring for ailing parents, the freedom and fear that came with heading west, the life she had built for herself in Parowan. She spoke of her need for self-sufficiency, born from watching her mother's dreams wither under the weight of dependency. "I never want to be a burden," she confessed one evening as they sat on the porch, watching stars emerge in the darkening sky. Tucker took her hand, his calloused thumb tracing patterns on her palm. "Partnership isn't about being a burden or being burdened. It's about choosing to carry life's load together because it's easier that way, happier." "Is that what we have, a partnership?" Tucker's eyes reflected the lantern light. "I'd like to think we're building toward one, if that's what you want too." "I do," Naomi whispered, the words feeling like a vow. 3 months after the flood, on a crisp autumn day, Tucker asked Naomi to ride with him to a spot overlooking the valley. There, with the town of Parowan spread below them and mountains rising in the distance, he knelt before her. "I ain't got much to offer except my heart and my hands," he said, producing a simple silver ring. "But both are yours if you'll have them. Marry me, Naomi." Tears blurred her vision as she looked down at this man who had saved her in more ways than one. "Yes," she said, voice steady with conviction. "Yes, I will marry you, Tucker Quinn." The ring slid onto her finger, a perfect fit. When Tucker rose to kiss her, Naomi felt as though her heart might burst with happiness. This was what it meant to choose one's own destiny, not isolation, but conscious connection with someone who valued her strength, rather than seeking to diminish it. They were married 2 weeks later in the town's small church, Martha weeping joyfully in the front pew, Thomas standing as Tucker's best man. The entire community turned out to celebrate, the wedding becoming a symbol of Parowan's resilience in the face of disaster. "Never thought I'd see the day," Tucker's friend Riley commented at the reception. Tucker Quinn settled down with a wife and home. "Neither did I," Tucker admitted, his gaze finding Naomi across the room where she laughed with her nieces. "But then, I never thought I'd fish a beautiful woman out of a flash flood either." "Lucky day for you both," Riley observed. "Luckiest of my life," Tucker agreed. Their first months of marriage were not without challenges. Both strong-willed and accustomed to independence, they had to learn the art of compromise. Tucker struggled sometimes with the confines of a settled life, while Naomi occasionally chafed at considering another person in her decisions. But beneath these surface adjustments lay a deep current of joy. They worked together to expand the cabin, adding a second room and improving the fireplace. Tucker proved surprisingly skilled at carpentry, fashioning sturdy furniture that transformed their simple dwelling into a true home. When Henderson offered Tucker the position of foreman, they celebrated by riding into the hills for a picnic, making love under the vast Utah sky. Naomi whispered her own news into Tucker's ear as they lay entwined. Their family would be growing by spring. The news of Naomi's pregnancy spread quickly through Parowan. Martha was ecstatic, immediately beginning to knit baby clothes. Thomas promised the finest cradle the territory had seen. Even Henderson, not normally given to sentimentality, offered Tucker more flexible hours as the birth approached. Winter descended on Parowan, bringing snow that transformed the landscape into a pristine wonderland. The creek that had nearly claimed Naomi's life froze solid, becoming a place where children skated and laughed. "Hard to believe something so beautiful could be so dangerous," Naomi remarked one evening as they walked along its banks, her growing belly protected from the cold by a shawl Tucker had traded 3 days' wages to acquire. "Nature's got many faces," Tucker replied, his arms secure around her shoulders, "just like people." "What face did I show you when we first met?" Naomi asked, curious. Tucker pretended to consider. "Wet, definitely wet," she laughed, shoving him playfully. "Be serious." "All right." He stopped, turning to face her, his expression tender. "You showed me courage, determination, a will to live that matched my own." Naomi rose on tiptoes to kiss him, her heart full. "And you showed me that sometimes accepting help doesn't mean surrendering strength." As winter deepened, Naomi's body changed, the child within growing stronger. Tucker would place his hand on her belly each night, marveling at the movements he felt. They discussed names, argued good-naturedly about whether the baby would be a cowhand like its father or independent like its mother. "Why not both?" Tucker suggested. "Strong and free, but knowing when to reach for help." "Wisdom from the man who used to ride away from every sunrise," Naomi teased. Tucker pulled her close. "Some sunrises are worth riding toward." Their son arrived on the first day of spring, entering the world with a powerful cry that Tucker swore could be heard clear to Salt Lake City. They named him James Thomas Quinn, honoring both Tucker's long-deceased father and Naomi's brother-in-law who had welcomed Tucker so readily. "He has your eyes," Naomi whispered as she cradled the infant, exhausted but radiant. Tucker, who had refused to leave her side during the difficult birth, brushed a kiss against her damp forehead. "And your stubborn chin. Poor child. Parenthood brought new challenges and deeper joys." Tucker took to fatherhood with unexpected ease, often carrying James with him around the homestead, as he completed chores. Naomi watched them together, her heart swelling with love for these two males who had completely reordered her world. By James's first birthday, Tucker had saved enough to purchase a small plot of land adjacent to their property. There he began building a larger home for their growing family, working evenings and weekends alongside friends from town. "You're putting down proper roots," Henderson commented one day as he rode past the construction. Tucker, hammer in hand, looked up with a grin. "Yes, sir. Found something worth staying for." As James grew from infant to toddler, life settled into a rhythm that neither Naomi nor Tucker could have imagined before the flood brought them together. They worked hard, Tucker at the ranch, Naomi maintaining their home and garden while also helping Martha with the books at the general store. Evenings were spent as a family, Tucker often playing his harmonica while James danced on unsteady legs, and Naomi mended or read aloud from one of the books Thomas regularly ordered for her from Salt Lake City. 2 years after James's birth, they welcomed a daughter, Elizabeth Martha Quinn. Their family complete, they moved into the larger house Tucker had built, keeping the original cabin as a reminder of their beginnings. "Did you ever imagine this?" Naomi asked one summer evening as they sat on their new porch, watching their children play in the yard. James, nearly 4, was showing his baby sister a grasshopper he had caught, his patient explanation making both parents smile. Tucker's arm tightened around her shoulders. "Not once in all my wandering years. I imagined independence," Naomi admitted, "but I defined it too narrowly. This," she gestured to their home, their children, "this is true freedom. The freedom to love and be loved, to build something lasting." Tucker's kiss was tender, a reaffirmation of all they had found together. "Who'd have thought it would take a flash flood to wash me right where I belonged?" "Divine providence," Naomi said, echoing her sister's words from years before. "Or just very good luck." "Either way," Tucker replied, "I'm grateful every day that I caught your hand and didn't let go." The years flowed by like the creek that had brought them together, sometimes rushing, sometimes gentle, but always moving forward. James grew into a thoughtful young man with his father's affinity for horses and his mother's love of books. Elizabeth, spirited and determined, showed early signs of the independence that had defined Naomi's life. Tucker and Naomi weathered the storms that came their way, drought years that threatened the ranch, illnesses that frightened them, disagreements that tested their bond. But through it all, the foundation they had built remained solid. On the 10th anniversary of the flood, they rode together to the spot where Tucker had first pulled Naomi from the water. The creek was peaceful now, flowing between banks reinforced after the disaster that had claimed lives and homes. "Sometimes I try to remember who I was before that day," Tucker confessed as they dismounted. "The man who drifted from place to place, never staying long enough to care." "And can you?" Naomi asked, her hand finding his. Tucker shook his head. "He feels like a stranger now, a ghost." "We're all shaped by the moments that test us," Naomi said softly. "That flood revealed your true character, Tucker Quinn. It didn't create it, maybe so." Tucker drew her into his arms. "But it certainly revealed what I needed most in this life." As they stood there by the water that had nearly claimed Naomi's life and in saving it, had saved Tucker's as well, they silently renewed the promise made a decade before. To hold fast to one another, no matter what currents might come. Life in Parowan continued to evolve. The town grew, the railroad finally reaching them 5 years after Tucker and Naomi married. With it came new opportunities and challenges. The Henderson Ranch expanded, with Tucker eventually becoming a partner in the enterprise. Naomi opened a small library in their original cabin, sharing her love of literature with the community's children. Through it all, They remained each other's anchors. When Tucker was tempted by wanderlust, Naomi would pack a bag and suggest an adventure just long enough to satisfy his need for open skies before returning home. When Naomi craved solitude, Tucker would take the children fishing, giving her the space she needed to recharge her spirit. It wasn't always easy. There were arguments, misunderstandings, times when the differences in their natures created friction. But beneath it all ran the unshakable certainty that what they had found together was worth fighting for. As their children grew and began to forge their own paths, James apprenticing with a horse trainer in Salt Lake City, Elizabeth showing a surprising aptitude for medicine, Tucker and Naomi found themselves entering a new chapter of their life together. "Empty nest soon," Tucker observed one evening as they sat by the fire, gray now threading both their heads. "Not empty," Naomi corrected, her hand finding his as it had countless times over the years. "Just roomier," Tucker chuckled. "Always did have a way with words." "And you always had a way of seeing right to the heart of me," Naomi replied, leaning into his shoulder. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the flames dance. Outside, the creek that had brought them together continued its eternal journey, a reminder of both the destructive and creative power of nature's forces and of love itself, which had swept them into each other's lives with similar irresistible power. "No regrets?" Tucker asked, the question an echo of one he had asked on their wedding day and many times since. Naomi's answer remained unchanged. "None." "You?" Tucker's kiss was his answer, as eloquent as any words could be. In it was contained all they had been to each other, rescuer and rescued, husband and wife, partners in the truest sense of the word. The flash flood that had nearly claimed Naomi's life had instead given her something far more precious than she could have imagined. A love strong enough to withstand any current, and a hand that would never let go.